Good morning. Welcome to Unitarian Universalist Church West on this beautiful Memorial Day weekend here in Brookfield, Wisconsin. In this place, we occupy the traditional territory of the native peoples of the 7 council fires, Ho-Chunk, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Menominee, Peoria, and Miami nations. We acknowledge our need to address racism, which continues to lead to the violent deaths and oppression of Jewish people, Black people, Indigenous people, and other people of color. We know that anti-Semitism, anti-Black racism, and settler colonialism perpetuates inequalities, injustices, poverty, and exclusion in U.S. society. With that knowledge held close, we commit ourselves to becoming an anti-racist faith, community dedicated to equality, racial justice, and right relations. My name is Jeannie Baker, and I serve on your board of trustees. Today, we're wrapping up May and its theme, The Path of Creativity. We're exploring today the role of destruction within the creative process. I invite you to consider that perhaps we could come to think that we need to lose things in order to find things, to burn things in order to make crystal, to break things down in order to form new combinations. Possibly we could consider that, and let's see how we do. It's so good to be together today as a loving and evolving community, gathering in and among so many spaces. To all of you online, know that while we can't see you, we know you're there. Wherever we are physically, our hearts and spirits are one. Later in the service, all of you out there in virtual land will have an opportunity to participate by sending a text. So this is new, by sending a text. So get your phone or a pencil. This is Reverend Julie's cell number. I feel like I'm casting it out in the world. So I invite you to write it down if you don't already have it. going to repeat it later. So those of you present in person will need something to write with, and I think you all have that. If you don't, please raise your hand. Here are a few things to help you settle in and feel at home. If you're a newcomer, in person or online, and you'd like to connect further, either talk to me after the service or one of our other members, or send an email to visitor@uucw.org. That's uucw.org. Or use the welcome side of the yellow form that you received when you entered the sanctuary. You can put that form in the offering baskets later, and we will get back to you. On this holiday weekend, we're not offering religious education class for our children. Dave will be here at the worship exploration table, and there he is, throughout the service for anybody, any age, who would like to use this space. As always, the service is streamed in the community room, and you can head there if you wish to spread out or move around a bit. Note that while it's not staffed today, the nursery room is unlocked, and you're welcome to use that space if you need. We will not be offering time in the service today for spoken joys and concerns, and are instead doing a ritual of remembrance. If you have something you'd like to share, once again, you can use the share side of the yellow form in the offering basket, or you can go to the side table and light a candle and put the form in the box there. There's coffee tea time after the service today for those who like to socialize. I'll be there in the receiving line and happy to talk to you or meet you. If you'd like a quieter space for conversation, and people tell us that sometimes they do, please take advantage to stepping out of the community room, back into here, or up in one of the meeting rooms. You're welcome to use those spaces. I want to highlight a couple of things, and there's a lot going on, so it's just a couple of things. First, much gratitude to Eileen Gleason and Carol Engelking for organizing last weekend with Peter Mayer. It was a huge success, huge success. And speaking of last weekend, there's another one. I'd like to offer thanks to all of those who came for spring cleanup to pick up, prune, weed, and wood chip around the property. It looks great. Thank you. Thank you, folks who came. Next Sunday, June 4th, and this is an important one, is our annual meeting. So exciting. All that you need to know was included in Thursday's e-news, including the annual report, nominations, and information about the ministerial search team. This meeting will begin shortly after service next Sunday. That's probably around 11:30. And that service, next Sunday's service, is also a new member Sunday and a flower communion. So it's a big deal. Lots of celebration. By the way, if you haven't been to a flower communion yet, and most of you probably have, you're invited to bring with you a flower, a stem, a sprig, a small branch, something to share. And if you get to the parking lot and you've forgotten it, just come on in anyway. There's always a lot. It's a really beautiful tradition. I want to highlight a couple of small things from the announcements you have in your service. Pay attention to the summer destination services date. Remember, we're experimenting this year with 4 times we're invited to go to the services at 2 other Unitarian churches, and twice they have been invited to come here. So it's a little bit of a mix and match. The dates are all in your order of service. Next Friday is lunch with Reverend Julie at 12 noon. That's proved to be very popular. Just show up. You don't have to RSVP or tell anybody. I also want to highlight number 6, band book storytelling. That's next June that's June 3rd at 10 o'clock. You're invited to bring a donation at the door. Please bring a non-perishable item. That sounds like a lot of fun. So that's next Saturday. It's always a privilege to explore and create meaning in the company of others. May this morning's service guide us on the path of truth and love.
Opening words are a way of invoking the Spirit and calling ourselves present to the moment. May these words of Ellen Cooper, contained in a larger piece that she wrote for Easter, remind us of all that grows out of the ashes. Sometimes the most profound transformations are the ones that emerge out of the deaths that we face in our lives. It may be a literal death, the hole left in your life when a beloved one has gone and you feel unmade by that loss. It may be any one of 1,000 lesser losses, the loss of a job or a friendship, the death of a marriage or partnership, a change in physical or mental ability, even the death of a long-held dream. These places of grief are barren places in our lives, God-forsaken places that teach us sorrow and suffering and lamentation. But feeling forsaken is not the same as being forsaken. Death doesn't win. Love wins. Like the saplings that sprout among the ruins of a forest fire, like the phoenix who is born from its own ashes, like the crocus that pokes through the snow each spring, hope rises. Hope rises up even in face of death, even in our wilderness. We are never completely lost. So come, let us worship together, and we'll begin by lighting our chalice.
Elizabeth Harding tells us that people have always known that fire was sacred. Fire is more than human. Fire has power. It can bring light and it can burn. Fire can be wonderful and fire can be terrible. It can create and it can destroy. When Unitarian Universalists gather, we light a chalice. This is our sacred fire. Today's chalice lighting words, printed in your order of service, were written by Barbara Peskin. Please join me in reading them. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. As we gather, let us remember to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, and to bow to the mystery. With these words reminding us that we are all flames carrying the light of hope to a new world, yet to be born, we light our chalice.
On this Memorial Day, let us remember Harry Belafonte, that dynamic singer and actor and civil rights activist who died last month, by singing his music and dancing. So turn to number 1074 in the Teal hymnal, Turn the World Around. I'm going to give you just a bit of instruction. It's 6 pages long. Remember how last week we looked at repeats in printed music? That means that between the place where you see those heavy black lines with dots to the side, we repeat. So in this case, we sing all of the first page before going on to page 2. We sing all of the first page 3 times before going on to page 2. Repeat and do all 3 of those verses. Then we do the second page, and just know that at the end of the second page, you have to turn fast, because the words come fast on the next page. So at the top of the 3rd page, there's another repeat, and that takes us through the top of the 4th page. And we repeat that section, and then we go on, and then you turn the page, and then there's a whole bunch of repeats again, which you'll know what to do because we've done them before. So I know you'll get it. If you want to drum or rattle or shake and rock and roll, whatever, head over to the worship table, and Dave has some instruments. So let's sing.
Fire, living in the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain, go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Whoa!
Good morning. I'm Dave Cicero, Director of Lifespan Religious Education here at Unitarian Universalist Church West. My pronouns are he and his. And today I've chosen to read to you, with permission from Candlewick Press, a book titled Ish, written by Peter Reynolds as part of his Create Trilogy series. Those 3 books each encourage self-expression, especially in ways that help us discover inspiration and outcomes that are different from what we might have first wanted or expected. Because when things don't turn out as we'd planned, as is usually the case, it's valuable to be able to change our attitude and our expectations. Getting it right, whatever that means, might be something that will impress others, but that might not be the most fulfilling result of whatever creative process we're enjoying at the time. So keeping an open mind about what we're doing takes patience and acceptance, but also requires encouragement, as we'll see, especially from people we respect and who love and value us for who we are. Ish. Ramon loved to draw. Anytime, anything, anywhere. One day, Ramon was drawing a vase of flowers. His brother Leon leaned over his shoulder. Leon burst out laughing. "What is that?" he asked. Ramon could not even answer. He just crumpled up the drawing and threw it across the room. I guess big brothers are not always the nicest. I know, because I am one. And we sometimes forget how much influence we might have on our siblings, on other people. So Leon's laughter haunted Ramon. He kept trying to make his drawings look right, but they never did. After many months and many crumpled sheets of paper, Ramon put his pencil down. "I'm done." Marisol, his sister, was watching him. "What do you want?" he snapped. "Well, I was watching you draw," she said. Ramon sneered. "I'm not drawing. Go away." Marisol ran away, but not before picking up a crumpled sheet of paper. "Hey, come back here with that." Ramon raced after Marisol, up the hall and into her room. He was about to yell, but fell silent when he saw his sister's walls. He stared at the crumpled gallery. "This is one of my favorites," Marisol said, pointing. "That was supposed to be a vase of flowers," Ramon said, "but it doesn't look like one." "Well, it looks vase-ish," she exclaimed. "Vase-ish?" Ramon looked closer. He studied all the drawings on Marisol's walls and began to see them in a whole new way. "They do look ish," he said. He felt light and energized. Thinking ishly allowed Ramon's ideas to flow freely. He began to draw what he felt, loose lines, quickly springing out without worry. Ramon once again drew the world around him. Making an ish drawing felt wonderful. He filled his journals, tree-ish, house-ish, boat-ish. Ramon realized he could draw ish feelings too. Peace-ish, silly-ish, excited-ish. His ish art inspired some ish writing. He He wasn't sure if he was writing poems, but he knew they were poem-ish. And one spring morning, Ramon had a wonderful feeling. It was a feeling that even ish words and ish drawings could not capture. So he decided not to capture it. Instead, he simply savored it. And Ramon lived ishfully ever after. So many wonderful messages in that story. Each of us is different, though, so I wonder what will stick with you. What will you remember or ishfully savor from this story tomorrow or next week or even a year from now? I know sometimes I wish I was better at remembering things, especially people and events that I realize in the moment they're happening are really significant. I wonder if some of you also sometimes get that feeling. I imagine Ramon felt that way when he first saw the crumpled gallery in Marisol's room. It certainly reset the way he thought about his drawings. But things I'd like to remember in one special way forever and ever seem to blur and fade over time. That's normal, right? Well, part of my personal faith is that even though the memory of past events or relationships might not be as clear as I'd like them to be, I'm certain that the things I learned from those experiences are still inside of me. They continue to affect me and inform my actions today. Of course, memories linger too about things we've done and wish we could do over or forget about, like Ramon's big brother laughing at his drawing. But instead of living with regret or shame, let's remember the lessons for us there too. As long as we're living, we're creating new things, new experiences, new memories, which build on those experiences and relationships that came before us. It's all connected. Nothing is really brand new. So I hope we can value today all that we've done and who all we've known, maybe even those we haven't known personally, but are part of our history and no doubt have helped make us who we are today. So we're all remaining here in the sanctuary today, and we'll transition to the rest of our worship service. While there are no religious education classes, I will be here at the worship exploration table in case anyone of any age would like to engage in other ways of creating and remembering today.
Thank you, Ruben, for that gift. Harry Belafonte, what a wonderful, wonderful musician. Good morning, I'm Natalie Fleury, and I'm very privileged to be with all of you today on this beautiful, beautiful morning. I'm going to be reading from both The Burning and the Light by Sean Parker. It was written in 2017 during the previous White House. I think it speaks beautifully to the ways in which destruction can be creative. He begins with lyrics from I Will Be Light by Matisyahu. It's in one tiny moment in time for life to shine, burn away the darkness. You've got one tiny moment in time for life to shine, to burn away the darkness. I will be light. Reverend Dennison goes on to say, about 6 months ago, I got a new tattoo. It's a lit match on my right wrist, added to an arm full of paintbrushes, pens, and other art supplies. As a minister, my tattoos are sometimes controversial, and I was a little nervous about what people would think about this addition. When people asked why I chose a lit match, I joked that it was either to burn the world down or to light my inner chalice. These days, the joke is less funny because things have gotten more serious. As the new president signs executive orders that give tax breaks to the most privileged while attacking immigrants, refugees, Muslims, GLBTQ people, people with disabilities, and anyone else he disagrees with, I am more and more committed to resistance. This deepened calling to a life of non-compliance will take a lot of burning and a lot of light. As an artist and religious leader, I believe in the necessity of creative destruction. A magnet on my refrigerator says, "Go forth and set the world on fire." That's attributed to St. Ignatius Loyola. For me, it's a statement of passion and a reminder that in order for justice to flourish, injustice must be dismantled. In order for freedom to be real, fences, cells, and walls must be torn down. In order for forests to remain healthy, wildfires must burn away the overgrowth. I am ready to embrace creative destruction as one of the tools we need in these times. But we need more than destruction. We also need to support each other. Lighting the flame of our common chalice, real or symbolic, is a powerful reminder that we cannot sustain ourselves by ourselves. We are not enough individually, and enclaves of like-minded people are not enough. We need each other to share the wisdom of lived experience, to remind each other to keep learning, and to love each other through the inevitable failures and eventual success of our resistance. We need both the burning and the light. Reverend Dennison concludes with these prayerful words: Spirit of justice, help us be courageous and committed in these times. Let us transform our ideals into action, our words into deeds. Let the fire of our passion burn with both light and warmth. In our anger, help us embody the spirit of creative destruction, always making room for more justice, more compassion, more love. May it be so. May we be the ones that make it so. Amen.
As you heard earlier, note that today's ritual isn't the usual sharing of joys and concerns, and if you have something you'd like to share in that way, to use the yellow form and slip it into the offering basket, and we'll put it in this week's e-news if you'd like. For today, we're going to engage in a remembrance ritual, something originally developed by Mary Geer. You know, as Reverend Dennison writes, we cannot sustain ourselves by ourselves. We are not enough individually. We need each other. And yet, we all too often lose each other to distance, to absence, to a breakdown in relationship, to death. On this Memorial Day weekend, when we are encouraged to honor and remember those who have died in war, and when many of us make trips to cemeteries with flowers, we gather in grief for all the losses we've experienced, be that people or pets or places or states of being. We also gather in gratitude for community and for this time to be together. You know, part of the process of grief is to acknowledge and name what has been lost. Knowing that this pandemic time and these times of gun violence and hate crimes and war, these times of change, even in this congregation, In these times, there has been much stress and loss impacting each of us, those we love, everyone. Now, each of you should have received a green piece of paper with your order of service. If you didn't, or if you need a writing implement, please raise your hand. And someone will get you something. In a moment, as the music plays, I invite you to write someone or something that you've lost, someone you want to remember on that piece of paper, as legibly as possible so they can be read aloud. It may be helpful for you to identify your loss in some way, as in my mother, Catherine, my dog, Tilly, or my sense of security. And for those of you online, I hope that you'll participate too. If you send me a text, and again, that number, we'll also read your contribution aloud. Otherwise, of course, you can choose to write something down or speak it aloud or in some other way acknowledge your loss. So Ruben's going to play for us now, and when the music ends, we're going to ask you to pass your paper to an aisle so they can be gathered up. So take a breath, and as you hold that paper, just take a moment to acknowledge the continuing impact of that loss on you, on those you love. And then Dave and I think some helpers will come down the aisles and pick them up. If you want to pass them to the aisle, that'd be great. So we're now going to read what you've shared of those lost. Thanks, Addie. In our community, your personal losses, maybe pets who've died or places you've left or other emotional states of being that seem irretrievable, that we may now remember. For each name, we're going to place a colored marble in the water that the fullness of that memory will be held. Bob, my dad. For Joe Fury, my 1976 student, a scholar who could not be open about his gayness, who died of AIDS in 1993, a great spirit. Craig, my brother. Janet, my mother. Sarah B., a friend who moved far away. And for Dorothy Ann, a friend. Linda, my wife. My dad, James. Mary, Bruce, Jan, Rita, Katie, Lois, Sarah, Leo, Helen, Emo, Art, and Libby. For my family and friends gone from this earth, I hope to meet again. My dear friend, Kathleen's daughter, E.B. McManus Brown. My mother, Lila. My husband, Mitch. My friend, Cass, who helped me see the good in life when I was young. My father, Earl. My sister, Kim. My parents and my sister. My cat, Marvin. My dad, Charles. My aunt, Mary Ann. My father, David Vig, MD. Anne Kulesia, mother. Anthony Kulesia, father. My father, Richard. My uncle, Jack Randall, Korean War veteran. My sister, Judy. My friend, Chris. Remembering and honoring a loss of health. My parents, John and Ellen Marie. My little sister, Sandy Tudor, and my community in Nicaragua. For the loss of innocence. My husband, Mark. My cat, Marvin, passed in October after struggling with cancer. My mother, Daisy. My pet, Tigger. My cousin, Jaime. My dad, Ramito. My dad, Patrick, and my cat, Hadrian. Jack Prince. My family, mother, dad, brother, continuity of life, only I remain. I remember Michael Huth, husband, Aaron Huth, son, Stephen and Agnes, father and mother. I miss the friendships that have expired. my friend Jane Laraway. I've lost my ability to share tears. My brother Andy, who died at 54 years old, too soon. My husband and my son's father, Curtis. My parents and siblings, Tom Berry, my friend, Little Boy, my cat. My brother Bill, my cat companions, Mr. Lovely, Waylon, Oscar, Ying, Sweet Pea, Mommy Girl, and Bear Bear. For my relationship with Les, although our relationship has stopped growing and this needed to come to an end, I will continue to love and miss our time together. My friend David, my mother Jeanette, father Louis, sister Annette. Tom, the lake house we built together, our grandbaby Teddy, who shared life with us for 16 days, my mom and dad who understand love without words, and many more. My brother-in-law, Adam, I think of you often. My nephew, Teddy, my father, Tom, Carol Bedwell, my teacher and friend. In memory of my mother, who died many years ago, and my partner, Jack, who died suddenly 12 years ago. Harvey, my dad. My husband, Dennis, who died five years ago of cancer. I mourn the loss of the notion I had that my marriage would be with someone who would be a good friend and someone I felt safe with. Jean Ham, a dear friend. I'd also just like to name losses that we are all continue to hold, those who have been killed, perhaps primarily because of the color of their skin. To name just a few of the hundreds: Dontre Hamilton, Philando Castile, Breonna Taylor, Dante Wright, George Floyd, and so many more. And we hold space for any names or things you wish to add. You may whisper them, say them, or shout them out loud, or you can hold them in the silence of your heart. In this silence, we hear the names, all the names. And we know that held within each of these names is a story. May we know that the infinite web of life and love holds us all and holds all these stories. Its strands connect us to our ancestors, to each other, to our future. Please join me in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of love and life, great mystery. We gather today in grief and in gratitude. May we know that what we have lost is with us still, and holding that loss, that we continue to create our lives. May we know that the mystery is unknowable and hold fast to each other and to that love that never dies. Amen. So please join me in singing number 337 in the gray hymnal, Have I Not Known? It's the beautiful words of Don Marquis set to the grand tune, Jerusalem. You may rise in body and or spirit as you wish.
Have I not known the sky and sea, put on a look as hushed and stilled, as if some ancient prophecy drew close upon to be fulfilled? Like mist the houses shrink and swell, like blood the highways throb and heat. The Sabbath stones beneath my feet turn foliage with miracle. And life and death but one thing are, and I have seen this wingless world, cursed with impermanence and world, like dust across the summer swirled. And I have dealt with presences behind the veils of time and place, and I have seen this world a star, bright, shining, wonderful in space. Be seated. While driving through Canada last week and finding myself without internet connection, I selected one of the few podcasts downloaded to my phone to listen to. It had been recorded in April of 2020. And one of the co-hosts said, "Here we are in the middle of this pandemic. Had we not known." And do you remember how in those early months we were all talking about creating a new normal and not allowing things to go back to the way they were? It seemed this really rare place of hope in those times that somehow, out of all of that shocking upheaval in our lives, out of the fear and unthinkable losses, something good would come, that we would learn a new way of being, a better way. Of course, within that hope, we can find the platitudes that some cling to about how there is a good reason. I have a feeling I forgot to be clicking along. Just a moment. I lost my place, lost my marbles. There we go, okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, within that hope, I think we can find those platitudes that some cling to about how there is a good reason for everything that happens, or about how struggle only makes us stronger, that when life gives us lemons, we're supposed to make lemonade and like it. This is not what I'm talking about today. Those smiley face emoji-like cliches kind of give me the willies.
though I admit that I very often fall prey to looking for fixes or ways out of bad times in order not to have to look at or feel that hard thing. Now, I do believe that we humans are slowly evolving and learning that it's important to take the time to look at and feel, really feel the hard thing, the grief, the disappointment, the despair. So whatever you hear today, know that I'm not suggesting that we look at destruction or heartbreak or the hard things only as opportunities to grow or gain strength or to make something new and beautiful. There is no honor inherent in suffering, no matter what comes from it. No one deserves to feel pain, and I do not intend today to offer platitudes. Okay, so that's one thing, a true thing. We surely don't need to experience loss in order to be creative or to experience transformation. And then there's this other thing that's also true about how the phoenix comes out of its own ashes, or about creativity emerging from the fire. Like, I was listening to a podcast the other day about the wildfires in Alberta, and the journalist reminded me of how forests need fire in order to flourish and survive. There's the need to clear out that underbrush in order to allow for new growth, but also the fact that pine cones only open up and release their seeds in the kind of extreme heat that's generated by fire. The fire burns through the resins that hold the pine cone together, making the cone scales open up, allowing the seeds to fall out. And of course, when we're experiencing the fire of hard times, we can turn to lessons like this found in nature, lessons that might also offer some comfort. But we are not pine cones. Fire just isn't a prerequisite for new life or growth or creativity in our human lives. And yet, we experience the fire of despair. We know the heartbreak of loss. We witness the devastation of war, literal and our internal wars. We've lived through times when it seems that all that we've built up has been torn down. And often our human lives do seem to gain something in these hopefully occasional upheavals, these times when we feel bowled over and lost. Both things are true. We don't have to burn down. We don't deserve to burn down. But when we do, something new can happen. So what are we to do with this? Years ago, Rabbi Harold Kushner wrote a little book called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. He wrote it sort of coming out of the reality in his life that his 3-year-old son had been diagnosed with a degenerative disease when he was faced with one of life's most difficult questions. Why, God? Why me? Now, Kushner struggles with how to make sense of suffering, especially when so often we feel that we're not getting what we deserve, or that there's some way in which our pain must fit into a purposeful pattern that we cannot see or know. Yet his book is called When Bad Things Happen, not Why Do Bad Things Happen. In other words, Kushner writes about what to do, about how to respond when we encounter sorrow and despair. He asks questions about what we can create or how we can respond out of our devastation. I'm reminded again of that beautiful pandemic time theater piece by the Bengsons, which I know I've talked about before. It's captured in a video called My Joy is Heavy. If you've never seen it, look it up. My Joy is Heavy. In it, they describe having a miscarriage and about realizing how, going forward, everything they will know or experience will contain the heaviness of that loss. And yet they find joy, though that joy is heavy. Their lives are irrevocably changed by that deep sorrow, and still their lives go on. They can still create, and what they create is different because of what they have experienced. Now, you might have noticed that the service description today spoke of the role of moral reasoning in such times. So let's loop back to where I began for a moment and consider that seemingly, oh boy, excuse me. Let's loop back to where I began for a moment and consider that seemingly universal desire in the early months of the pandemic to create a new normal, to not go back to life and business as usual. I mean, how'd we do with that? We had such hope, such good intentions, and found such comfort in that possibility. We were experiencing an unbelievably hard time. And maybe that image of a new world order provided just the comfort and the hope we needed. Now, I tend to think that our hope was grounded in a kind of moral reasoning, seeing an opening where we might make some choices that could really make a difference. We felt called to reckon with our usual, the busyness of our lives, the outsized role consumerism and striving played, the social systems that perpetuate injustice and an inequitable distribution of resources, the pervasiveness of racism. All these things became more evident to us. Were we changed? Yes, I believe we were. Were we changed enough? Well, I'm not sure that a new normal has been realized. And yet, I think we're a little bit closer to it. You know, I'm humbled by and grateful to those of you who took the time to listen to that lecture I gave last week. In that lecture, I spoke about change theory, about how change happens and how to make change happen. Now, one of those theories says that change most often happens bit by bit, slowly over time, step by step. The longest march can be won. Another theory says that we are more likely to be changed by what we are proximate to, the people and the communities we spend time with. And vice versa, we are most able to affect change in the people and communities closest to us. But the cautionary note here is that thinking about change in this way can lull us into thinking that it's going to happen on its own. In due course, things will go ahead and just change. So here too, a moral perspective is needed. You know, waiting it out or asking those who are hurting to wait is just not a very good moral position. So what are we called to do? What do our values, if truly lived, require of us? When we are laid flat by suffering or feeling broken by the weight of the world, what will we make of and out of that reality? What might we create? We could do nothing and wait, of course. And yet, if we are to pay attention to a moral imperative, we're called to create something better, more just, more loving. When our hearts are broken, to find more compassion. When our lives are undone, to build those connections that put things together stronger, more sustainable and green. You know, there's so much hope in this, and yet I recognize that there are many, perhaps among you, for whom hope is not a helpful concept. It's become one of those platitudes, a comfort really a little too thin, feels kind of empty. And perhaps in response to those kinds of feelings, Joanna Macy and Chris Johnson wrote the book Active Hope with the great subtitle, How to Face the Mess We're In with Unexpected Resilience and Creative Power. In it, they describe how hope and action are necessary companions. That is, if we are to play our role in what Macy calls the great turning toward a life-sustaining society, we need both hope and action. Hope alone is not enough. We must also act, create, build something new. Some assembly required. Now, in short, shit happens. Life can be hard, that's real. But just like at any other moment, in such times, we have options, choices. To build something new, to lean toward the sun, to help seeds to open up so that the phoenix can rise from the ashes. Somewhere I came across a quote by Catherine Butler Hathaway, a quote that I put aside for possible inclusion in this service. And then when I looked at it again, it took me down that path to figure out who was or is Catherine Butler Hathaway. Well, I found that she was born in 1890 in Massachusetts, and as a child was afflicted with tuberculosis of the spine. And she spent her entire childhood confined to her bedroom, pinned down to a board with weights, in hope that this restriction would cause her spine to grow straight. But the treatment didn't work, and she was left both stunted and hunchbacked, never growing past the height of a 10-year-old child. A life literally laid flat. But here's that quote. She said, "I invented this rule for myself to be applied to every decision I might have to make in the future. I would sort out all the arguments and see which belong to fear and which belong to creativeness. And other things being equal, I would make the decision which had the larger number of creative reasons on its side. I think it must be a rule something like this that makes jonquils and crocuses come pushing through cold mud," unquote. Other things being equal, and we all have to grok these kinds of considerations. All things being equal, choose creativity, choose the moral path, choose change that makes a difference, choose to break out of the ashes, seek the beauty and the joy that is to come. I think it must be something like this that makes jonquils and crocuses come pushing through cold mud. May we be like jonquils and crocuses. May it ever be so. Amen.
Our Split the Plate partner for May is Peace Action Wisconsin. It is Wisconsin's largest peace and justice grassroots nonprofit organization that works to abolish the threats of war and nuclear weapons. They are committed to nonviolence as a way of life where human needs are met and the environment is preserved. Here is a video created a few years ago that was sponsored by Peace Action, along with Veterans for Peace and IVAW, Iraq Veterans Against War. Sadly, today's wars have new names, and veterans and their families must continue to protest and lobby their representatives to end military conflicts around the world. Here at UUCW, Split the Plate is our way to fulfill our UU values and reach out to the community. If you are participating virtually, go to our website, UUCW, click on Donate, and select Split the Plate from the menu. Or you can text or email your donation today using the information found here. I thank you for your generosity to Peace Action Wisconsin. We will now gratefully accept the offering.
Unitarian minister Robert T. Weston was an Army veteran of World War I and a Navy chaplain in World War II. He died in 1988 in Highland Park, Illinois. And these are his words. I will lift up my voice and sing, whatever may befall me. I will still follow the light which kindles song. I'll listen to the music arising out of grief and joy alike. I'll not deny my voice to the song. For in the depth of winter, song, like a bud peeping through the dry crust of earth, brings back memory and creates anew the hope and anticipation of spring. Out of a world that seems barren of hope, song decries beauty in the shapes of leafless trees, lifts our eyes to distant mountain peaks, which, even if we see them not, remind us that they are still there, waiting, and still calling us to come up higher. Out of the destruction of deep hopes, out of the agony of heartbreak, song rises once more to whisper to us that even this is but the stage setting for a new beginning, and that we shall yet take the pieces of our hearts and put them together in a pattern of deeper, truer lights and shades. For I will lift up my heart in song, for in singing I myself am renewed, and the darkness of night is touched by the promise of a new dawn. For light shall come again.
Out of the darkness of night comes dawn. Out of times of chaos and destruction, we rise again. So we're going to lead you in the chant, We Are Rising Up, Ruben and I searched, but we couldn't confirm who wrote this, and there's lots of different versions online. One UU religious educator speaks of it as a campfire song, but it wasn't that familiar to me, so after today, maybe it will be for all of us. An earworm I think that we all need. So I invite you to stand as you're willing and able to sing. The words are printed in the order of service, and actually we repeat the first 2 lines, and then the other part, we're just gonna start singing, and I know you'll catch on, right? Do you have a note to start on? We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Siblings in spirit, spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Siblings in spirit, spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up. We are rising up. We are rising up. We are rising up. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Siblings in spirit, spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Siblings in spirit, spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up. We are rising up. We are rising up. We are rising up. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Siblings in spirit, spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Siblings in spirit, spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up. We are rising up. We are rising up. We are rising up once more. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Siblings in spirit, spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Siblings in spirit, spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up. We are rising up. We are rising up. We are rising up. Yay. Please remain standing for our closing words. So here we are again. It's so good to be with all of you and spent this time together. The end of another Sunday morning together, feeling grateful for this time, this space. Say a silent word of thanks to all of those who made today possible, including our ushers and greeters and coffee makers and music makers. Then offer a prayer of gratitude for our ability to create, even out of what's broken and lost. This time together does matter. I think it changes us. Our closing words are those of Tet Gallardo, who is the executive minister of the UU Church of the Philippines. We cast not our eyes down. We say to ourselves, we are how we came, wounded from struggles, triumphant in our survival, entitled by birthright to belong to this, the only humankind there is, saying, we are included, we belong. We are here and we will be and do. We will breathe joy into a desolation. We will breathe peace into conflict. We will breathe life into destruction. We will be the earth we wish to see. We are growth and hope and glee. So go now and touch this world with creativity, love, and life. Blessed be. Ashe. Amen.